Hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit. No influencer status necessary. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and it has been a while since we've had an episode more related to what we put ourselves through with the summit rather than just all strategy. So I can talk strategy to you guys all day long, but if you end up in your own way constantly throughout the process, it's going to remove your ability to actually enjoy it and will likely have a negative effect on your results too. So today in episode 103, I've brought in a special guest to talk about self-sabotage. And this is something that can show up in all areas of your life and your business. So, we might kind of go a little broader with this one, but it also directly relates to summits. It can have a big part to play in your event as well. So we'll be sure to point out how that can happen. But to give you some background information on our guest, she's a trauma-informed coach and speaker who helps people shift from self-sabotage to self-support. She spent her life creating safe spaces for people to heal and realize the power of who they are. I have been following her and the incredible work she does since I think 2015, if I'm remembering correctly. And if you don't already know her, I am so excited to introduce you to the incredible Ashley Beaudin. Welcome, Ashley. I'm so excited to have you here. Yeah, this is going to be such a good change of pace. And I think this is an episode we all need. I'm totally going to be taking notes. This is going to be so good. Before we dive in though, tell us a little bit about you and your business and maybe a little bit with your summit experience.
Yeah, totally. My name's Ashley. I'm a coach where I specifically help people move from self-sabotage to self-support. I feel like I'm always saying that, it's constantly on a record. Self-sabotage to self-support, self-sabotage to self-support. And that is the transformation that I just love to facilitate for people. I have been in online business full-time since 2014. And so I have seen a lot of trends come and go, but self-sabotage has always stayed. And so I just know specifically that self-sabotage can show up in very specific, intentional ways when we're in our businesses, when we're doing things like summits. I also have run summits before. I've done 4, and I'm actually working on my 5th right now. I'm super excited. And my first 3 summits were okay, but did not go super well. I just did so much work and didn't get a lot of profit or leads or anything like that. So when I was able to finally get some momentum in the last summit, I was super excited and super pumped because bringing people together is one of my favorite things ever. So anyone who's listening and you're in the trenches of running a summit, I totally know what it's like. And a lot of the examples that I'll give you for self-sabotage are things that I have also walked through myself.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Love that. And yes, I'm glad to hear that you've been in business since 2014, because then that means I was right. I was I'm pretty sure I ran into Ashley right when I started. So yeah, it's always fun to think back and all that stuff. So can you start by telling us what self-sabotage really is and how it tends to show up for people?
Yeah. So the big thing that I really just like to bring home is that self-sabotage is not a character flaw. It's not because you're broken or there's something really wrong with you, but that self-sabotage is a safety mechanism. It's ultimately a way to make sure that you are staying safe and to realize as humans, our capacity for resilience and resourcefulness and survival is insane. And so self-sabotage is just one of those ways to make sure that we stay safe and we get through it and it's all going to be good. But self-sabotage is often formed and created out of painful experiences, whether that be trauma earlier in life or even difficult things that you've gone through recently. You will ultimately form your self-sabotage to protect yourself from those things happening again.
Oh my goodness. When you said that it's a safety mechanism, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about it, how it can show up in business where, when you're going to try something new, it's so easy to get in your way and just feel that anxiety and go in a different direction. And it's you keeping yourself safe from potentially failing, but also maybe doing something really cool. So when you positioned it as a safety mechanism, that makes so much sense. I love that. So let's tie it into a summit a little bit to help people see what that can look like. So do you have any examples of how self-sabotage can show up when someone is trying to plan this big event for all kinds of people with all kinds of experts, not terrifying at all?
Yeah, no. Super easy. Yes. So I created a archetype of self-sabotage. I have a quiz on my website that you can take to figure out what your dominant type is. But I'll give some examples from a few of the types and how it could show up in a summit. So, for example, I mean, this is a huge one, and I think that one that a lot of people relate to would be procrastination. And so that would be you're working on a summit and you're just like super procrastinating on the tasks. Maybe you're like using Krista's timeline and you're like, but just pushing everything to the last minute. And this type is just really this belief of like, I only feel safe when things are chaotic. Like I need to feel this sense of pressure and chaos in order to feel like I'm doing okay. And a lot of times like this type as well, you might just also be used to the cycle, that very physical cycle of stress. And so you'll probably push into the last minute. Another one that I really wanted to mention for summits is the people pleaser, because I can see this one coming up so huge because to me, summits, one of the big things about summits is that summits are really about people management, managing speakers, managing attendees, managing people who purchase upgrades, and really like loving and serving those people well. But if you are in a self-sabotage type of people pleasing, which is I'm safest when everyone is happy, you might go into self-sabotage around being super hyper vigilant that people are going to be upset with you. Or if someone's disappointed, it could like send you into a total spiral. And you could just get caught up in that self-sabotaging pattern. The third one I think that I'll mention is the overthinker. And the overthinker is I feel safest when someone else tells me what to do. And because of that, I would consider that type to be someone who really outsources your inner knowing. So even if you sign up for something or you sign up for a strategy and you have like a step-by-step plan, this is what I'm supposed to do, you're still going to be overthinking every single step because ultimately at the end of the day, it's that you don't trust yourself and you don't trust your ability and capacity to show up for yourself in a way that's good enough or approvable in your experience. And so that type, you're going to self-sabotage your summit by being like, am I doing this right? I don't know if I'm doing this right. Would someone please tell me that I'm doing this right? And you'll struggle to really get momentum in moving your action plan forward because there's going to be so much energy that gets sucked up by that constant overthinking and overwhelm.
Oh my gosh. This is really cool. I didn't realize, we've heard of all these things. We've heard of procrastination. We've heard of people pleasing and overthinking, but I never put that together that that's a form of self-sabotage. And, they all have related ways that they affect us. You blew my mind with this. And I can think of certain students I have in Summit in a Box. I'm like, oh, this person is an overthinker. This person does this. And I think that's cool because that will help me love on them better and help them more. And I'll tell them to go take your quiz. How many types do you have, by the way?
There's 8 types.
8. Are you willing to run through you don't have to do a quick explanation, or you can do an explanation, but are you willing to list off what the other ones are?
I can go through the 8 types.
I'm really interested.
I'll go through the 8 types, tell you what it is and what the core belief is. I'm safest when. So there's the shamer. I'm safest when I feel bad. The overthinker. I'm safest when other people tell me what to do. The procrastinator. I'm safer when my mind is filled with chaos. The assumer. I'm safest when things are familiar. So the assumer, how you can normally tell someone's in this is because they'll say things like, I'm not going to try for that job because I'll never get it anyway. Or I'm not going to do this summit because no one will come anyway. The guardian, which is I'm safest when I'm emotionally guarded, when there's this distance between me and other people. The overworker, I'm safest when I'm busy and distracted. The perfecter, I'm safest when things are perfect. This one could be another huge summit one. And then the last one, the people pleaser. I'm safest when everyone else is happy.
Ashley, I feel very personally called out by some of these.
Good.
This is so cool, though. Oh my goodness. I never would have put all of this together. I love this so much. Thank you for being willing to walk through all of those. And I'm going to link to her quiz in the show notes, by the way, everyone. So definitely check that out. We'll talk about it a little more at the end. Okay, so we know what all these types are now, and my mind is blown. Can you tell us about, are there any specific clues or warning signs people can watch for in themselves to recognize self-sabotage coming into play?
Yeah, so ultimately I think it's going to really depend on what your dominant type is, because all of them are going to show up with much different clues. For example, the people pleaser and the procrastinator, they're not going to show up in the same way. Like the people pleaser, a clue that you might be starting to get into that pattern is you are saying things like, I need to make sure that this email pitch is perfect. The procrastinator is going to be like, I don't want to do that now. I'll do it tomorrow. Like those are two very different cues. But one of the things that I talk about a lot is doing what you can to map out your dominant self-sabotaging cycle. And when you're mapping out your cycle, you're basically looking at what are your 1 to 2 most common types, because normally those types will work in partnership together. And just kind of like looking back on a previous experience where you self-sabotage and make it one that's like doesn't have like a lot of emotion in it. So something like a time when you were like trying to form a new habit, like, I don't know, I always say running, but I think it's because it's like a habit I would never do. I would definitely self-sabotage. So I feel like it's a great example, but it could be something like going to the gym or running or like not eating donuts every day or whatever you want it to be. And specifically pick one where like it didn't work out, like where you couldn't stick with it, and just like very mindfully like process that experience of what happened. Like, why didn't it work out? Was it that you procrastinated doing it? Was it that other people's needs were more important? Was it that you always thought, well, I'm not doing it perfect, so what's the point anyway? And then to look at were there any like thoughts or beliefs or clues or feelings that were driving that, and see if you can just process that to help you map out how your cycle might be working. And then what makes that so powerful is that once you can loosely map out, and for all my perfectors, I'll just be like, this doesn't have to be perfect. It's fluid and it can change. But it's just a good starting point just to give you an understanding, a self-understanding. And we use that self-understanding to help you self-support. So then you can look at the cycle it's almost like you can just look at what you mapped out and identify like 2 to 3 parts or points in the cycle where you could self-support or almost like create an exit, so that you're not like necessarily going on hamster wheel over and over again, but that there's like almost like all these open doors to be like, well, this is where I can exit and like move out of the cycle. Ideally that is always done at the beginning. So like, for example, let's say that you're a procrastinator and you know that you're starting to procrastinate because one of your cues to yourself that you're procrastinating is that you just can't stop scrolling. Like you're just like scrolling on social media. Or another one could be that you're just constantly researching. You're looking at everyone else's summit. You're looking at all their sales pages, but like not taking any action on your own. That can be a cue to you. So then in that cycle that you mapped out, you can make that one of your first exits and say, when I notice myself doing that, that is a cue to me to shut off my phone, or that's a cue to me that I need to set like a micro goal and I need to share it with someone. It's a cue to me that I need to leave my house and go work somewhere else. It's a cue to me that I need to give my phone to someone, whatever it needs to be. So that's an example of how you can start to map out that cycle and then create openings to stop the cycle and actually move forward.
That is so cool. This is awesome. This is like so much more actionable than I expected from a conversation like this. And I personally love it. This is amazing. So is that like the next question I was going to have for you, like, was what can someone do to push past or heal from self-sabotage? Is that kind of what you just mapped out, or is there more to that?
Yeah, there's more, because I would say that when you're looking at healing self-sabotage, you're ultimately looking at 2 different layers. So what I just shared, what I would say is like the right now layer. Like that's the actionable stuff that you can do right now. Another way that you can, in that right now layer, is something called self-support layering. So like if your self-sabotage is super activated and operating, you can layer it with self-support, because ultimately you have to look at self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is an attempt at self-support, but only to the measure of which you believe you are worthy to receive. So if you're like, I suck and I don't deserve good things, like for example, that's like a huge core wound for the shamer, then self-sabotage is going to feel a lot better than doing something like asking for help. And so realizing like that even your self-sabotage is an attempt at self-support, but can we use that muscle for self-support to redirect it to different types of support that actually help you and that actually move you forward? So let's say, for example, you're like, I need to do my sales page today. This happened to me yesterday. I was like, I need to do my sales page today. How can I layer that with self-support so that I can actually move forward? So I'm talking like really simple things. I'm talking like putting a blanket on your lap, or like having your favorite music on, or going to write somewhere where you like love the atmosphere of the environment. just layer as much self-support as you can in that, because that will help to soften the self-sabotage. So that's like the right now layer. But then there's the layer of like healing what's leading you to the self-sabotage in the first place. So that's like the more intense stuff, the trauma, the pain, the patterns from early childhood. And that is more of a long game process. That's not something that we heal overnight, which is why I think it's so important to have both of those layers. Because it's not like this thing where you're like, where I'm going to be like to you, like, oh, well, you suffered so much pain when you were younger. It's going to take like 10 years to help you. You can't do anything about it right now. It's really a dual process of support and transformation. And so that is more of a long game, but it's ultimately about doing the work to heal the trauma, doing the work to meet your inner child or any of these wounded parts of you that are still suffering, using things like self-compassion and inner child work, infusing senses of safety and self-care into your life, because all of those things will help soften the need for self-sabotage. When I am working with clients, that's what I always want to direct this to, like, how can we soften your need for self-sabotage? Because if we can lessen your need, then we don't have to worry about managing your behaviors, because we're just like, you just don't need it anymore. You don't need it like you once needed it.
This is so cool. Oh my goodness. I'm like so excited about like the whole idea of this, as you can probably tell. This is so cool. Okay. I'm going to not go down a rabbit hole, and instead I will ask you, what is like the biggest takeaway you want listeners to get from what we talked about today?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway would be that your self-sabotage is about safety. And the biggest action I think I would want someone to take away is look at how self-sabotage operates in your life with like in that frame of mind that it's about safety, and just get as much information as you can. Because once you can do that, you can map it out, intercept it, and heal.
Totally. And you guys, Ashley's quiz is the perfect place to figure out like what type is you and where to start with getting that information you need. So Ashley, can you let us know a little bit more about where people can find you, what you offer, and your quiz?
Yeah, so you can find the quiz at ashleybeaudin.com. When you take it, it'll give you your top type, but then it'll email you a guide of all 8 types and kind of how they operate, the effect that they have, likely what happened in your history to form that type, but also the gifts of each type, because there are gifts and strengths buried underneath that self-sabotage. And I would love for you to take the quiz. I would love to know how it went for you. So you can also find me on Instagram and DM me. I would love to know more. Ashley.Beaudin.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of this with us so freely. I think this is going to make a big difference for a lot of my Summit hosts. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. For show notes and resources we mentioned, head to summitHostHangout.com/103. Now go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit.